Okay, first of all, I would like to thank everybody for coming out and welcome to the Ward 6 debate, Ward 6 forum, co-sponsored by Action Annapolis and Eastport Harbor House Tenant Association. My name is Andre Atkins, I'm president of that association. You know, this is an important election, so I was hoping to see the place packed. We have a pretty good crowd, but I hope we learn something from these candidates. This is very important. I would like to introduce the lady that's going to introduce our moderator from Action Annapolis, and her name is Lynn Sonjay.
All right, first I want to thank Harbor House Eastport Terrace Residents Council for hosting this tonight. In particular, Andre and Dorleen Atkins, who have been great in terms of being a partner with us in this event. And I want to thank the candidates for your enthusiasm with this type of thing. I think it's terrific. And thanks to our moderator as well. I'm going to do a little commercial now. This is about Action Annapolis. We are a nonpartisan organization. We were formed after the Women's March in Washington earlier this year. And over the last several months, we've been very focused on elections, primarily because we have local elections going on and they're important to us. However, we do work on other issues like healthcare, social justice, women's issues, and the environment. So we welcome new members, and we'd like to have you come and work with us on these. All right, now for a few statistics. Both organizations, as Andre said, believe that this is a very important primary. Your next alderperson is going to be determined in this primary, so it's important to vote in the primary. So here's some historical information. In 2013, in the primary, we had 1,800 registered voters in Ward 6. Guess how many voted? Right, 281. 281. So if you think your vote doesn't count, when you're talking about these kind of numbers, it counts. So keep that in mind. There were a couple of wards that were worse, but actually wards 4 and 7 were worse, but that's not the mark you want to compare yourself to. So the dates to remember are September 19th, that's the primary date, and November 7th, which is the general election. Okay, when you came in, you may have noticed we have 2 tables with literature on them. It's all the voter information you could possibly want. So please stop over there and take a look. There's voter registration forms if you're interested in registering. And you can register until October 9th for the general election. The primaries are closed. We have absentee ballot applications. Polling places, you probably know them. They're here at the center and also at Mount Moriah Methodist Church. We also have a questionnaire that each of these candidates responded to in detail. Lots of information. We've summarized that into one questionnaire for this ward and also for the mayoral candidates as well. So please stop by and grab one of those because it's a lot of information in a pretty handy format. And I think that is it for the announcements. And as you know, there's refreshments in the back when you leave. Now I have the honor of introducing our moderators. Reverend Dr. Carletta Allen. She's the lead pastor at Asbury United Methodist Church. Dr. Allen was born in Tampa, Florida, and grew up in DC and PG County. And I hope you have any family in Tampa. Or
they are fine.
They're good, okay. Dr. Allen holds a BS in Behavioral Sciences from the University of Maryland. She holds a master's degree and a doctorate of ministry from Wesley Theological Seminary. Dr. Allen moved to Annapolis in 2011 and to assume her current position as lead pastor. She served on a number of nonprofit boards and commissions and is currently serving on the Anne Arundel County Public Schools Blue Ribbon Commission on Equity and Achievement. Dr. Allen is the proud mother of a son whose service in the military included 3 tours of duty in Iraq, She has a 4-year-old grandson on the West Coast whom she loves to visit. Dr. Allen, we are pleased and honored to have you as our moderator tonight.
Good evening to all of you. It is so good to be with you. And it really is an honor to be asked to moderate. This is an important election. Every election is an important election. It is just exciting to see how much energy, renewed energy there is in this town and this county. You are here because you understand that we live in a time when your vote counts more than ever. And so tonight you're going to have an opportunity to hear from two people who are here vying for your vote. Each of them has a vision for the city, especially for this ward. And my job tonight is to give them the best opportunity they can have at this forum to express themselves. I believe you know both of the candidates. I'll know the ladies first. It is Shanika Henson. And neither of whom is an incumbent. And so it's an open field in your ward. As you heard, the primary is the election for this ward because we don't have a Republican challenger. So it is very important, I'll say more about that later, that you make it to the polls for the primary if you want to decide who's going to be your alderperson. I happen to believe that we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. And so if I want a quieter world, I need to be quieter. If I want a more just world, I need to be a person of justice. If I want a world where people are honored and respected, then I need to be honoring and respecting. So that is what I bring to this evening. I ask that we be an environment where people are honored and respected. I'm not trying to squelch anyone's passion. I hope you are passionate about the things that matter to you, about your families, about your children's future. I'm not trying to squelch that. I'm simply asking that we treat others the way we want to be treated. That tonight is about dignity and honor and respect. Within the time frames, I'll try to give everyone an opportunity to express yourself, but there are time frames, because we do want to go home before Jesus comes again. So we are going to be out of here by 8:40 tonight, amen? So to the format, each candidate will make a 5-minute opening statement. And who goes first was determined by a coin toss. Ms. Henson won the coin toss, and she deferred. So Mr. Gay is going to go first. He will make the first opening statement. We have a timekeeper, and he has a big screen, which right now doesn't have a clock on it, but it's going to come back. And he will be quite visible, or that screen will be quite visible to the candidates. And when your turn comes, it'll be visible to you. So they have 5 minutes for the opening statement, and about 30 minutes before their time is up, he will give them a signal. And, I'm sorry, 30 seconds, thank you. 30 seconds. And if they go beyond that, then he's gonna stand up. And when he stands up, they sit down. Because if they don't sit down when he stands up, then I stand up. And you don't want me to stand up? Because I just want to be the love of Jesus tonight. We ask that you please hold all applause till the end of the forum. I promise you, you're going to have an opportunity to whoop if you want to at the end. But I ask you to please hold all of your applause to the end. That is important to the candidates. Every one of those seconds matters to them. So if you start applauding, then you're eating up their time. So you don't want to take away from their time. We will begin, as I said, with 5-minute opening statements from each candidate, and they are going to lay out in 5 minutes what their vision is for this ward, for this city, and why you should vote for them. We are looking for their 3 top priorities in the position to which you would elect them. Their 3 top priorities, their vision for the city, and why you should vote for them. Mr. Gay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for coming out. I, again, would like to thank the Eastport Tenant Association and Action Annapolis for putting on this event and allowing us to express our views to you all. Just to get things a little pumped up, Barack Obama, who's one of my favorite political leaders, he used to do this thing at rallies where he say, "Fired up," and they say, "Ready to go." Did he say, "Fired up"? Ready to go. Fired up? Ready to go. And that's the same action that I plan on bringing, and the same enthusiasm that I plan on bringing to the City Council and for the residents of Ward 6 each and every day that I'm elected in office. I came to Annapolis, Maryland about 9 years ago. I went to Bates Middle School, and that's where my passion for politics really kicked off. I had an amazing teacher. His name was Preston Hartman. He now works at Annapolis Middle School, and he instilled in me the responsibilities for government and how they're here to help individuals and uplift communities, and I carry that with me every single way. I also joined the Boys and Girls Club, and under the help of Caleb Wolf, he mentored me outside of school, and he took me on trips and let me see what life was like outside of Annapolis, and that's what got me to the point where I am. I've seen that through educational opportunities, through job growth, we can provide so much help for those in need, and that's exactly what I plan to do. So I graduated from Bates Middle School and I went to Annapolis Middle School. Annapolis High School. At Annapolis High School, my junior and senior year, I decided to get involved in the SGA. I became a 2-term class president. My friends sometimes call me the Barack Obama of high school, because when I came into office, my junior year, we had a deficit. We were down, I think, $16,000, and we flipped that. We matched it, we raised it to $20,000, and we had a surplus. And we were able to help kids pay for prom. We were able to help kids get into graduation and afford what was needed for high school. So that's where I had my first run-in with a budget. While also in high school, I had my first run-in with politics while working with Senator John Astle. And working with Senator John Astle at the time of the start of the opioid crisis, he introduced legislation known as the Good Samaritan Law. At the time, Maryland didn't have a Good Samaritan Law. And what that law does is help individuals who are in the same room with someone who may be under the influence, that you can call the police and they'll come and help and you won't get arrested. Because at the time, if you called to help, you would get arrested too. So that was my first run-in with politics, and I went right downtown, right on 6 Bladen Street, and I sat and I testified in front of the committee. And the bill passed, and now we have a Good Samaritan Law in Annapolis. I also, before it was popular to speak out against the Board of Education in politics, I did so. I sat on several committees underneath the PBIS, and I championed for our students at Tyler Heights Elementary. And our students, although it's not in our ward, our students still go there at Georgetown East Elementary. 2 schools that are extremely overcrowded and need funding desperately. Quick story, when I was walking through the neighborhood at Georgetown East, a teacher expressed to me the desire for funding. Students come with not prepared for lunch. Students don't have breakfast. Students don't have the proper clothes to wear. They don't have a PTA. It's important that we advocate on their behalf, and I've been doing that since I've been in high school. And I plan on continue doing that if elected. I think it's so important that we invest in our communities, because that is the only way that our public housing residents will have a great foreseeable future. And I think that it's important to bridge that gap. We're not a white Ward 6 and a black Ward 6 and a Hispanic Ward 6, or a poor Ward 6 and a rich Ward 6, but we're one Ward 6. And with the common goal of stronger together, we can make these dreams and these hopes and these goals of the residents of Ward 6 come true. And that's exactly what I plan to do if you elect me in 5 days to be the next alderman of Ward 6. Thank you very much.
Hello. I first would like to thank Action Annapolis and the Eastport Tenant Council for hosting us and having us here tonight. My name is Shanika Henson, and I'm running for Annapolis City Council for Ward 6. And I have been saying that for 2 years now. I first started this process about 2 years ago. I first lived in Ward 6, it was 2004. And my life had kind of taken me full circle at that point. I spent my childhood, my evenings, my weekends with my dad's church, the New Life Church. And one of the things that we did was community outreach. We went into some of the disaffected neighborhoods in Annapolis, and we gave out school supplies, we gave out clothes, we gave out food to those that were in need. So that's what I did as a child. And then at 20 years old, I found myself a single mom living in subsidized housing here in Annapolis. Those same neighborhoods that I used to go to give back to was now my home. People who I used to give resources to were now my friends and my neighbors. And I got to see a whole different way of life in Annapolis. So after while living in Ward 6 in Bay Ridge Apartments, I completed my undergrad degree, I went to law school, I took the bar exam, and I came home to my apartment in Bay Ridge Apartments. After that, when I became an attorney, I of course moved out. But when you move out and you live in Annapolis, where do you go? Glen Burnie. Because there is no place that's affordable to live in the city of Annapolis. So after living in Glen Burnie for a year or two, my son, who's now 13 years old and is a student at Annapolis Middle, he really wanted to move back to Annapolis, and so we did. And when I came back to Annapolis, I visited my friends and neighbors in Bay Ridge, and I realized that a lot of them had not had that same opportunity to move onward with their life. We had sat around and talked about our goals and our dreams for ourselves and our families, and I thankfully was able to realize mine, but so many of them were not able to realize theirs. And it was at that point that I started to look around and say, what's out there for people who want to move from one phase in life to the next? What can you do to really make your dreams come true here in the city of Annapolis? And after looking around, I didn't find those resources. So it was maybe a solid year where I kind of just complained to anybody that would listen and said, do you know this? Have you heard this? And then after complaining about it for a while, I decided that I could either complain about it, I could be complicit in it, or I could change it. And that's when I made the decision to put my name on the ballot and run for office. Thank you.
Thank you both. I want to share with you the rules for the questioning period. I'm going to share them again when we get there, just in case some persons come who didn't hear them the first time, because they're very important. After I give you the rules, then I am going to spend a few moments asking you some questions, and then you're going to have an opportunity to ask them some questions. You will be asked to stand when you ask your question. Please state your name and where you live. You don't need to give your street address, but generally the neighborhood where you live. Indicate to whom you are asking the question, if one or the other or both. They will both have an opportunity to respond. No matter who you direct the question to, the other will have an opportunity to respond as well. Issues, not personalities, are what we hear about tonight. When you go home, you can talk about that moderator's hair was crazy or whatever. But tonight, we are here to discuss issues, not personalities. As I said earlier, be the change you want to see in the world. Dignity, respect, honor. Treat people the way you would want to be treated. No personal or abusive questions are to be asked. Speeches from the floor will not be permitted. We're not here tonight to make speeches. There are other places where you can make speeches. You can go to City Hall and make speeches. Tonight we're here to hear from these candidates, to ask questions. So you are going to have a very brief time to ask your question. You're going to have 1 minute. That's 60 seconds. And so if you haven't actually asked a question, after about 49 seconds, I'm going to ask you, what is your question? Okay? So please, questions, not speeches. 1 minute, 60 seconds. I have the right to rule on all questions. If I believe that it is not appropriate or in order, then I will rule it out of order and they will not respond. Even if you want to, you will not respond if I rule it out of order. The candidates will be limited to answers not exceeding 2 minutes. Remember, each of them will have an opportunity to respond to your question if they choose to. I'll repeat these again a little bit more rapidly when we get to that point. But now it's my turn. We will alternate who receives the question first? And we will begin with you, Ms. Henson. For both of you, for all of the questions, please provide your desired outcome along with specific strategies and resources that you would employ to achieve those outcomes. State your desired outcome along with specific strategies and resources. It has been said, and it has been said many, many times, that Annapolis is two cities, rich and poor. Ward 4 is one of the most diverse wards in the city. There are some particular and peculiar challenges to this ward. In your opening statements, we heard some of the things that seem to matter most to you. And so I would like to hear from each of you, beginning with you, Ms. Henson, your long and short-term vision for handling development in this ward, specifically with regard to East Ward.
Well, she mentioned that there are two Annapolises and said, what is your plan with regard to development in Eastport? There are two Eastports as well, and you are in one of them. There is another Eastport that's on the other side of that street as well. For the people who live here, the American dream can often feel very close yet very far away. It lives right across the street from you. You see it every day, but you somehow cannot grasp it. With regard to developing, my strategy is let's redevelop, not overdevelop. We have enough existing structures here that have reached their life cycle that are due for redevelopment. So I prefer redevelopment as opposed to overdevelopment. With regard to Eastport Terrace Harbor House, there's been lots of talk about redeveloping this property. One of the only models that people seem to present is the public-private partnership. That's what redeveloped Annapolis Gardens, that's what redeveloped Old Berry Court. We've learned a lot of things from the public-private partnership, and one of them is that it's really not a partnership. Public-private partnerships are the privatization of public housing. And oftentimes, after those properties are redeveloped, the same group of residents can't get back in. It doesn't look just different on the outside, it's different on the inside. Things like credit scores are a factor. They take arbitrary things into consideration to lock people out who used to live there. So with redeveloping Eastport Terrace and Harbor House, we need to get creative with funding sources. You need an older person that's going to hold Housing Authority accountable and make sure that they don't limit themselves to just spending the dollars and cents that are given to them by HUD, but making sure that they reach out beyond those borders, reach out beyond those budgets, and bring in new resources to revitalize these properties without leveraging ownership.
In regards to development within Eastport, we obviously can talk about the Eastport Landing Project. We can talk about what was formerly known as Crystal Springs. And I'm sorry, I'm a bit sick. And when we look at these projects, we have to look at the size and what they plan to do. The bonus of it, it increases employment. It increases revenue. Those are the two upsides of development. But we have to look at the negatives, and that includes congestion within our streets and the things that we already don't like. So if you look at those plans and you look at what's going on, if we put them on a smaller scale, I think they can be effective. In regards to public-private partnerships within public housing, I am a firm believer that public-private partnerships can work. We talk about what happened in Old Berry Court and Annapolis Gardens, and the contracts weren't managed properly. That's why it didn't work. You can't give developers 51% of a contract because what they say goes. So when you come to the table, you have to make a proper development. If we were to get money from the state, if we were to get money from HUD, that's a partnership. Anytime you take money from someone, that's a partnership because that money has guidelines. So anything we do in regards to public housing is a partnership. It's just a matter of how we enforce those funds. Will we let them be mishandled, or will we use them properly? In regards to a public-private partnership, at the end of the 30-year contract or 15-year contract, whichever they decide to go with, HACA has the option to buy it back. And you can't do that if you spend the money. If you sit on that money, you have 30 or 15 years to save that money. You can buy back the contract so that those residents won't be out of a home. And I guarantee you, if I'm elected as alderman, that will not happen. My mother lives in public housing right here in Eastport. Do you think I'm gonna let my mom go out on the street? I'm gonna be a champion for public housing because this is a community that I know all too well, and I know the residents in it. And we cannot afford to let them go homeless. Thank you.
You can remain on your feet.
Absolutely.
The next question. Continuing that vein, one of the concerns about development or redevelopment is the protection of the occupants during that redevelopment period. What actions would you take? What strategies would you use to protect those persons who are already in housing?
Absolutely. So last night, I read through the contracts, the former contracts of Annapolis Garden, and what Ms. Henson said is correct. They often do have extremely hard situations that allow you to get back in. But if you bring those to the table at first, that won't be a problem. If we know that the average income of public housing residents is $15,000, and that we just got off of a bad recession, and that credit is going to be a problem, why would we put that in the contract? Why would we allow that to be a clause? That just shoots our residents in the foot, and we can't do that. So when going into these meetings, you have to make sure we have to hold HACA accountable. We have to hold the city accountable and say, look, these partnerships can work if we work on the right contract. It's all about the deal. I hate to sound like Donald Trump, but it is about the deal. It's about what you present, what you put into it. And if you go in with good intentions and good developers and a good team at HACA and a good board commission, then it can be successful. And I think that's what we can make happen.
So what am I doing with regard to the redevelopment and how would I protect residents, I believe was the question. On your chairs when you came in, each of you had a blue piece of paper. On this piece of paper is a proposed resident bill of rights. The tenant council president here in Eastport Terrace Harbor House, Mr. Atkins, he came to me one day and he said, Ms. Henson, they're going to redevelop these properties and I want to know what our rights are and there's some things that the residents want. So we sat down and I drafted a proposed residents bill of rights. And the residents are going to introduce this to Housing Authority and say, these are the things that we need to be protected if you redevelop these properties. Some of them are given to them by matter of law, and the law is quoted after it. Some of them are given to them because it's an ask that the residents want to have. Some of those things, like there has to be a one-for-one replacement. For every occupied public housing unit, you have to make sure that there is public housing on the new property that you develop. We want to see that right enforced. When residents are transitioning from one unit to the next, the Housing Authority has to assist them with moving. We want to see that enforced. So I sat down with him to draft this up and to submit this to Housing Authority to make sure that all the rights of the residents are protected. There's one other one on here, and it's called economic opportunity. Redeveloping these properties will present a great chance for residents here to be employed and to learn a new job skill. We are asking that Housing Authority train the residents in public housing and that they employ the residents in public housing when they redevelop these properties. That's why I took the time to sit down with Mr. Atkins, who works tirelessly for this community, to draft this so that everyone will be protected in transition. I also just want to clear up some things. With regard to redeveloping the properties, these properties are owned by the Housing Authority Association. Selling these properties has to be done per the federal guidelines. The only way to do that they have introduced currently is the RAD program, the Rental Assistance Demonstration, commonly referred to as public-private partnerships. Under the RAD program, ownership of the property changes hands from the Housing Authority Association to the private developer of that property. And then it's a 30-year contract where for the 30 years, the things that you have agreed to are the law of the land. And then after those 30 years, the deal expires and that developer is free to do as they wish with the property. The only thing remaining is an affordability covenant, which is not enforceable and doesn't have any mechanisms in there to protect the residents thereafter. We have not yet seen what happens when these properties fall off the cliff, when that 30 years is over. If Housing Authority didn't have the funds to redevelop them, they certainly won't have the funds to purchase a brand new remodeled property.
For I ask the next question, I'd like to invite those of you who are standing in the back to come on in. We're so glad you're here. Please come on in. There are lots of seats. Of course, there are lots of seats up front where nobody ever wants to sit in. But we do want you to be comfortable so you can concentrate. As it happens, as I was coming here tonight, I saw an Annapolis City police officer walking up the street. It occurred to me that he was out of his vehicle and walking. Community policing is the question. What does community policing mean? And how can we improve community relations with our police department?
Community policing is a term that you hear used often, but very little effort is given to define that term or to commit that to policy. Community policing is when officers are assigned to a designated community and they work that designated community. They get to know the residents in that community, they build trust and partnerships with residents there. If something is out of place, that officer is the first one to notice that it's out of place. If someone is just having a bad day versus being a bad guy, that officer knows that, has that judgment because they've been there in the community. Community policing is something that we like to see implemented, but if you look at the budget for our police department, we have not committed the resources to training dollars to really train our officers on an effective community policing model. We expect them to do that, we want them to do that, but we haven't yet dedicated the resources to really adopting that in the city of Annapolis. So I would like to see us improve the funding for training for our Annapolis City police officers and adopt a true community policing model where they have the opportunity to build those relationships.
Just to be clear, the question was in regards to community policing?
Community policing, what is it, and community relations?
Absolutely.
We can improve it.
So I think that by implementing a proven 21st century model known as community policing, it does a great deal. It changes. You mentioned that you see an officer walking when you got here. Due to city law, officers are only required to be out of their car 45 minutes on a 12-hour shift. That just can't happen. That number has to be dramatically increased. Because when you're in your car, what crime are you solving? What relationships are you developing with the citizens that you work with? I also like to talk about the grant that we just got recently to hire more police officers. It is a firm belief of mine that if we hire police officers from our city, train them in our city, they'll know the town, they'll know the community that they're working in. And that goes a long way. Building those relationships, building that trust between an officer and a young African American male like myself, who when I see a cop, I immediately tense up. But if I know that cop, loves my community as much as I do, if I know that cop is going to protect me and is not here to harass, I will work with that cop, I will gain respect for that cop, and he'll be like my best friend. And when crime happens, he'll know who to come to. When crime happens, he'll know the community, he'll know the layout. That's what community policing is. We can't get by on 45 minutes anymore. We have to increase that number. We have to start building those relationships. And I plan on doing that. I plan on enforcing that policy. And I think that the city has taken great steps to do so, but there is so much more to go. There's so much more to do. And I think we can do that. It's time to start putting our words into action. We've been saying community policing since I was wearing uniforms at Bates Middle School. And I'm now 10 years out. We have to make the change, and the change is now. Absolutely.
What concrete things can the city council do to impact the growing economic disparity between rich and poor in this city? What concrete things can the city council do to impact the growing economic disparity between rich and poor in this city?
Absolutely. So a lot of times we talk about middle class, what it means to grow and expand the middle class. But if you continue to pump money into the same middle class, nothing's changing. You have to invest in that lower class. You have to invest in public housing residents. You have to invest in the 90% of single households in the city of Annapolis that are dominated by female head. You have to give them the resources. And that's something that I've talked about since January 31st when I submitted that application. I intend to bring community resources to our neighborhoods. You have to have job opportunities. You have to have economic opportunities, bringing trade programs, certificate programs, where jobs are growing, introducing environmental policy and environmental legislation that will help fight our stormwater problem and help our environment and create jobs. It's there, we just have to do it. In the exact neighborhood that we're in right now, there's 80% of the residents don't have a high school diploma or GED equivalent. And that has to change. And that changes by encouraging them, letting them know the incentives that live on the opposite side of obtaining that GED or high school diploma. And then we have to let them know that that GED or high school diploma in today's economy isn't going to cut it. And that now you have to go further. We're going to keep pushing you, and we're going to work with you so that you can obtain that trade degree or that 2-year degree from Anne Arundel County Community College. And we're going to push you even more so you can obtain a 4-year degree. You have to do that by presenting the resources to them. In particular, our males, our African American males, who so often drop out of high school. That has to change. We have to present opportunities to them. We have to let them know that jobs wait. We have to let them know that education waits, because education is the key to a successful future. And I believe that if we bring those resources to the communities, not just Eastport, but Bay Ridge Gardens and Robinwood, and not just public housing, but all of Annapolis and all of Ward 6, then we will increase, our employment numbers will go up, our poverty numbers will go down, our crime numbers will go down. Because if you're at work, if you're getting that education, you can't afford to commit a crime. And I think that goes a long way.
It was maybe 2 or 3 months ago. It was after I left the meeting. It was about 5 p.m. and I was riding through the ward. I rode through Robinwood, and do you know what I saw at 5 p.m.? I saw men and women getting off of work. I saw women in nursing scrubs. I saw men with reflector vests on. They had put in a full 40 hours in that work week, and they were still only able to live in Robinwood. And that simply shouldn't be the case. There is a misperception that our public housing residents aren't trying hard enough or aren't working hard enough. And that is a misperception. Our residents have jobs. They need career opportunities. The same bridge and the same platform that I was able to have to elevate myself, our residents need those opportunities. And it's good that everyone comes around every 4 years and they say that, but what you really have to do when the rubber meets the road is find a way to fund those things, and that's not the easy part of it. This is a serious job, and it takes a serious person that knows how to balance a budget, that knows how to look for resources, that knows how to bring funding to your city. If we are going to really give our residents a leg up and a bridge, we have to invest more in support services. Our public transit in the city of Annapolis is just not acceptable. It doesn't take you where you need to go if you don't have a car and you're trying to get to work and better yourself. We have to invest in things like after-school programs. The city runs the Recs and Parks program, and we've had a funding shortage with our after-school programs. We have to reach out to the county, we have to reach out to other resources and make sure that when a person wants to do better for themselves, they have the opportunity and the backing of their city behind them to do it.
And thank you for that segue, because my next question has to do with transportation. Much has been said about the need for jobs, about the need for career opportunities. I've only been here for 6 years, but I hear stories about the good old days and the jobs that were in town, and the U.S. Naval Academy and the hospital. More and more, the jobs are not in the city of Annapolis. What is your proposed solution to building jobs in the city and building career opportunities for the citizens of this ward and the city, given the transportation or lack thereof in the city?
Dr. Allen is absolutely right when she says that lots of people who are professionals here, they travel outside of the city to go to work, as I do, to Baltimore City every day to practice law. We have to make sure that we have more career opportunities right here in the city of Annapolis. We are the state's capital, but only 2 of the 20 principal state departments, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Aging, all those state departments that we have, only 2 of them are located here in the city of Annapolis. We need to bring state jobs to the state's capital. We have the MAFE building that's vacant on Forest Drive. We have the space and we have the workforce that is here and ready to occupy those jobs. We need the state to partner with our high schools and train children so that when they graduate, they have a career opportunity ahead of them once they're done with school. Bring a different innovative business here so that people can open their minds and possibilities to something that they perhaps had not considered before. So if I'm elected to this position, one of the things I will champion is bringing some of our state agencies down from Baltimore, and not just to shorten my commute, but to make sure that we all have the opportunity to benefit from being the state's capital.
Could you just repeat the question again one time? I'm sorry.
How will you increase jobs and career opportunities for the citizens of this ward and the city, given the transportation challenges, the public transportation challenges we face?
Absolutely. So when I got my first job here in the city of Annapolis, I worked at the Giant over on Forest Drive, and I caught the bus. The red route would ride right in front of my grandmother's house. I'd get on the bus and I'd go to work. The problem was getting home. That's step one, increasing the time period of our buses. But we have to find that funding. We got to be proactive. Once we do that, I think that solves a tiny bit of the problem, but not the whole problem. 14.5% of Annapolis City residents live below the poverty line. That's 2% higher than the entire state. We have to get serious about providing opportunities within our city for our residents. And we can do that by attacking growing markets. Our trade programs, HVAC, will never go away. You'll always need someone for that job. Our environmental concerns, I said this before, but if we create jobs to fix our environment, we're knocking two things out at one time. We've got jobs, and now we're fixing our environment. Things like that must start. We must invest in these programs that are already started. Programs that take place in this very rec center. That go after those who have the drive and the energy and the fight, looking for employment, looking for a way, a career, so they don't have to work two jobs, so they don't miss their opportunity to see their families. We have to get serious about providing opportunities, and we can only do that through investing. When I look at our budget, the budget is only reflective of one Annapolis. There isn't many millions of dollars pouring into this ward. There isn't millions of dollars pouring into Ward 4. That is a gap. The budget should be reflective of the entire city, and investment should be made. And of course, the funding will be difficult to find, but you have to do it. When I worked over on the state capitol for 2 years, every session from January to April, I work in the state capitol, and I work closely with Delegate Moon and Delegate Andrew Platt, and eyeing how they get money for specific bills, how they work with the budget. And that education that I learned on the state level is what I plan to bring to the local level. That tenacity, that hunger for the investment in our communities, and not just public housing, for the entire Ward 6. There are young teachers living in our community that are barely making ends meet, but we must stop that. We have to get serious about putting money into these communities, and I plan to do that. And I think the question's next for me. Absolutely.
Successful civilizations have known for thousands of years that the true mark of a healthy society is what we do for our children's children. What policies or administrative practices would you support in order to ensure a hopeful future for all children in this city? What policies or administrative practices would you support in order to ensure a hopeful future for our children's children?
Absolutely. So when we talk about making partnerships with our county, one of the most important things that I think that we should start implementing is that when our young teens and our young adults are jailed at the jailed at the Jennifer Road Detention Center, that while they're there, we create a program with the county that allows them and gives them the resources so that once they're released, they're not doing the same thing. You go to prison, you go to detention center, you sit there. There is not a mental health advocate there to work with you. There is not a career building program there. And if it is, we must start investing in it. Because the recidivism rate is not declining, it's increasing. Joe, this is a theoretical name, Joe will do something on Frederick Douglass on Friday, get arrested, come home on Wednesday, has no clear plan, and do the same thing, get arrested again, and that cycle continues, and that's something that must end. We must start investing in our children. And it starts again going back to those educational institutions. Tyler Heights Elementary School, Georgetown East. 2 schools that I advocated for and I fought for as a student in high school. I fought for funding at Annapolis High School because I knew how important that funding was to the successful lives of our teens. We sat in front of the board and we petitioned and we begged them, please give us funding for programs like AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination, a program that I went through that got me successfully into college. A program that works with underserved youth in our community, gives them the resources so that in their junior year, they're creating scholarship applications. They're creating essays, so they're ahead of the rest of the students. We must start investing in programs like that. And I've been an advocate for it since high school. And I plan on continuing to do the same thing. Because as I've said so many times tonight, you'll hear me say it again, the key to success is education. We know how important a degree is. So we must invest in programs that will ensure our residents that same opportunity.
Last year, Tyler Heights Elementary School, which I pass every day going home, was at 133% state-rated capacity. 133% state-rated capacity. When I go to some of the single-family homes here, I had a person tell me, I rented my house out and I moved out of the district so I wouldn't have to send my son to Tyler Heights Elementary. That's how bad we have let that school become. Of course, the education there, the curriculum is controlled by the Board of Education. Of course, the funding is controlled by the county council, but we still have influence as the representative for this district to fight for those dollars to revitalize Tyler Heights Elementary. Tyler Heights was ranked #2 on the state MGT study for a new school. Tyler Heights was bumped all the way down in favor of a new Crofton High because there were folks advocating for Crofton High. The job of the alderperson is not just voting yes or no on city legislation. It is being an advocate for places like Tyler Heights. But before you get to being an advocate, what you first have to do is be fiscally responsible. Because if the dollars of the city are going to be in your hands, you need to have demonstrated the opportunity to control and manage a budget. Each candidate is required to file a campaign finance report, and those are available online. When you look at the campaign finance report, you see the meticulous time it takes to keep those records right. When you look at my opponent's campaign finance report, you see that there was $180 that was raised, that $180 was mismanaged, and the account was left in a deficit. We cannot leave our children in a deficit. It has gone on for too long, and we need an advocate and a representative that is going to make change.
Absolutely.
So, one, it wasn't $180, it was $100. We had a bounce check. Took us down. The bank tacked us for that bounce check. It took us down, and it kept taking us down. We got the negatives, but we got that up. And I don't pride myself on raising money for a campaign, because I like to reach out to my constituents and talk to them, and get to know the concerns. You know what I did? Not as a candidate, but as a civilian? We raised $12,000 so we can get central air into these communities. That's the fundraising that I did. I didn't put my time into raising money for a campaign because I know how important it is to reach out and get to know my constituents. Yeah, we had a mess up, but we're increasing that. And if we talk about my history of deficits, as you know, we raised that deficit at Annapolis High School. I said that before, a surplus of $20,000. So yeah, we had a small fall because we had a bounce check, but we moved forward from it. And that's the attitude you have to have when working in communities and working in the city. You have to move forward. And that's exactly what I intend to do. think next question is for me. Oh, okay, perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Gay and Ms. Henson. But it is your turn to ask questions. You've heard them talk about housing and transportation and education and jobs and careers. You have an opportunity to follow up with any of those or to speak about what matters to you. I want to share with you one more time, for those of you who were here and for those of you who were not here, these are the rules for the audience question period. If you have a question, please stand, state your name and where you live. We don't need your street address, but what community you live in will be very helpful to the candidates. Please indicate to whom you are asking the question, one or the other or both. Understand that even if you choose one candidate, the other has an opportunity to respond as well. Issues, not personalities, are to be addressed. Nothing personal or abusive or nasty or even catty. We are here to honor one another and respect one another. We want the truth. We want to hear the facts. We want to hear truth. We want to hear opinion, and we want to do it in a respectful environment. No speeches, not tonight. You can go home and make all the speeches you want, but not tonight. Tonight, we are here to ask questions. So if you have a long wind up to your question, and I don't hear a question, I'm going to interrupt you and ask you, what is your question? I need you to get to a question. And you don't get to make a speech and then say, don't you agree? No, no, no. You need to ask a question that they can answer. Your questions are limited to 1 minute. We have a timekeeper. That's 60 seconds. That's a lot of time to ask a question. If you go beyond that, then I will cut you off as nicely as I can. Please come in. There are lots of seats up front here. We're so glad you're here. The moderator, that is moi, has the right to rule on all questions. If I deem a question to be inappropriate or out of bounds, I will rule it and they are not to answer the question even if they want to. And candidates will be limited to 2 minutes this time in responding to your question, 2 minutes each. Any questions about the rules? Any questions from you all? Who's first? We want to make sure we hear you. What you have to say is important.
So my name is Sheree Miller, and I live in the Hilltop area, Hilltop Lane area. My question is for Shanika Henson. I have a two-part question. Have you ever worked in a grant fund organization? And if elected, do you know how to get a grant?
Thank you for your question, Sheree. I have worked in grant-funded industries for a large portion of my career. My very first job as an attorney was working as a legal services attorney representing victims of domestic violence and peace and protective order hearings, and that was for the YWCA of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. Obtaining and keeping a grant is a meticulous process. You have to report exactly what's required, and you have to report it accurately. You have to be a faithful steward of the money that they give you in a grant, or those funds will not be available to you anymore. I've also worked with grants in our parents' church, my parents' church as well. I worked with Full Life Inc., and I managed grants there as well. I've worked with Housing and Urban Development Department as well, and a property management company there too. I understand the rules, I understand how to follow the rules, and I understand how to obtain resources.
Sorry, what was your name? Sheree, thank you for coming out tonight. And your question was in regard to grants. I have not worked on the amazing level that Ms. Henson has worked on, but I have worked on grants. Right at the Boys and Girls Club, right at Annapolis Senior High School. Well, we had to write grants to get with the state or the county didn't give us in funds. So I have that background experience. And if I don't have it on the level that she has it, you better believe I'm gonna go get it. Putting myself through grant writing courses, reaching out to Ward 6 residents who have worked in grant writing. Please teach me, because I want to be the best candidate that I can be for Ward 6 in the city of Annapolis. Thank you.
I see hands up here.
My name is Cynthia Carter, former alderwoman of this lovely district. I'm no longer in the city of Annapolis, but I live in Annapolis, 21401 zip code. But I want to ask a question. There's always the speak or talk of having jobs, but as we all know, the transportation does not allow them to get it to the jobs that are available that's worth them having, and as far as earning the money to take care of the family themselves. But the next thing is that the training, each and every one that I've spoken to who have had encounters with the legal system, they have not been able to get their records clean. So not only can they not get a job, but they can't get training for the job or the assistance. Do you have any plans for them to get expungements or anything to help them to get the training for these jobs that they have out here that's on 10 or 15 pages in the Baltimore and Washington paper, and at least 2 in the Capitol? Thank you.
So who was your question, Director?
This is to both of them.
Yes.
So it's interesting that you said that, Ms. Carter, because when working in the State House, Delegate David Moon, who I worked with, submitted legislation so that we can get marijuana off of the urinalysis test, because it's such a common drug. 58% of Marylanders admitted to using it. So I've worked hard with state representatives to get that off of the record, expunge that from the record. He had 2 pieces of legislation. One was for expungement and one was to get it off the urinalysis. And I'll bring those same relationships down to the local level so we can work together and pass sensible legislation that says, how else do you expect residents to make a living if they can't work? If you can't find a suitable job, there is no reason that you shouldn't be able to get a job because of something you did in your past. Something as small as possession of marijuana, which we see on the national level is becoming, it's almost like a misdemeanor now. So if you're asking, do I support getting that off? Absolutely, and I'll work hard with whatever colleague I have to make that happen.
The first part of your question, and thank you for the question, Cynthia Carter, former alderwoman for Ward 6, someone that I've had the pleasure of casting my vote for, and someone who has been an amazing champion for this area even after her term in office. The first thing I do to bring jobs and resources to those that have no jobs or resources is bringing more state jobs here to the state's capital. It is something we absolutely must do. All of the state agencies cannot be headquartered in Baltimore because, as the alderwoman noted, there's a huge transportation gap between getting from here to Baltimore on time for work. So that's my very first plan, is to bring state jobs to the state capital. My second plan involved in that as well is that we have to get smarter, about what we are doing with regard to our offenders who are re-entering the community. As an attorney, I work with the local pro bono committee. As an attorney, we are all encouraged to donate so many of our hours and time to giving back to those who can't afford an attorney, who need an attorney at no cost or at a low cost. While working as a pro bono attorney, I participated in a program called Lawyer in the Library, where we set up shop in the public library and we offered our assistance as an attorney for free to those who needed the assistance of attorneys, helping people expunge their records, helping people understand the charges that were against them, helping people figure out their family law issues as well. So I not only have dedicated myself as a public servant, but also in my professional career to giving back to those in need.
There's a hand up there.
Hi there. My name is Marie LaFerriere. I live over on Van Buren Drive. Both of you made the point that when people get out of public housing, there's a pretty big gap between that and the other available housing. Can you give us one or two things that you do to change that?
Ms. Henson?
So first, I think it's important that we start looking about what possible developments we can create within Ward 6 at an affordable rate. If you drive down Tyler Avenue, there are amazing vacancies sitting there waiting to be redeveloped. And then next to it, there are great lots waiting for single-family homes so that people can move in. And secondly, in 2004, the moderate price dwelling units was enacted. And there are flaws in it, and I'll tell you what flaws there are and what I think should be changed. Number one, it requires that if you like to rent the property, the moderate price dwelling unit, and let me explain that. The moderately priced dwelling unit requires that when a subsidized property is built, 12% of those homes are used for affordable housing. So when you want to rent that home, it requires that 30% requires that you make an income of at least $30,000. Now, if I told you earlier that the average income of public housing residents is $15,000, it wouldn't cut it for the single mother down the street that wants to get out of public housing. So I think that minimum should drop to meet reality. Because in 2004, before the Great Recession, $30,000 was easy to access, but it's not now. Secondly, if you'd like to buy that home, it requires that you meet the eligibility for a home loan. And when I seen that, I thought about our hardworking teachers at Anne Arundel County public school systems that want to invest and take the next step and purchase a home. But they can't, because they carried the burden of debt from school and making sure that they had higher education, and now they have bad credit, and they can't reach those goals. Or I think about the family that made it through the recession, but has bad credit, and they can't reach those goals. So we have to work out some sensible legislation to make sure that individuals are able to move into affordable homes.
Thank you.
My plan is not to lower the standards, but to raise the income. If $30,000 is what's required to rent that unit, then you probably need more than $30,000 to successfully occupy that unit or own that home. So my plan is to bring economic empowerment to the residents so that they can afford to transition from public housing to private housing. Also, when you look at housing affordability, there are only two ways to get housing affordability out of developers. That's incentives and that's mandates. And I don't think that we have used enough of both. Incentives give you a benefit for making affordable housing, and mandates require that you make affordable housing. Those are the only tools in our tool bag as legislators, and I would intend to use both of those.
Hi, I'm Vicki Gibson. I live in Ward 4, but I had a question. Recently, the county came up with something called Arundel United to help address issues of racism. I was just curious to hear what you feel the city's role is in that whole activity, and what you think that the city should be doing to combat racism, and what you view the alderman's role would be in that process.
So, we talk about tackling racism. In 2015, I believe it was, or 2016, that's exactly what I did. On a Friday night, Alton Sterling had been killed, and Philando Castile had been killed. And I was on the phone with my good friend who goes to Syracuse University. And we were talking about how can we bring this to attention. in our small city, because she's from Annapolis as well. So in a matter of 2 days, I used the power of social media, and I got almost 300 people to walk from Bates Middle School down West Street, down Main Street. We had a rally at Silly Dock. We talked about racism because it's something that must be talked about. Silence is the equivalent of acceptance. So I have no problem with addressing that. And I think that any sensible candidate would not. And we talk about what's going on in our city now, and the fear of some elected officials to speak out is ridiculous. I've also had the opportunity to join many groups in our city and in our county. Surge, Arundel Indivisible. And I work with these groups, the Caucus of African American Leadership. And I attended their events because it's so important that in our city that sometimes can be so much friction between races, we open up the conversation. We participate in events. We join hands together. And we talk about the importance of loving our neighbor. I've done it for years, and I plan on continuing to do that because it's so important for me, as a young African American male, to make friends with Barbara Weber, who lives in Hillsmere, so we can establish a relationship together. That is so important because through that relationship, great things can happen. I continue to work on racism, and I continue to fighting against racism and shutting down white supremacy because it must be done.
Thank you for your question, Vicki. What is racism? Race and then an ism. An ism, just like capitalism, just like socialism, it is a system. Race. Race is a competition. It is a competition for resources. Racism is a competition for resources when one race is trapped at the bottom and the other is on the top with the resources. So if we want to address racism, we have to address the system. Marches are wonderful and they galvanize people and you feel so great when the march is over. But when you go home, the racism is still there because we have not yet attacked the system that keeps people in those positions, and that's what we must do. I applaud the county's initiative. I thank the executive for bringing awareness to the problem. But if the executive really wants to tackle it, he has to get at the root and he has to attack the system that keep people in those positions.
My name is Edith Mike. I'm a homeowner in this area. I've been here for 45 years. We talk about public housing. Someone talk about the home ownership. There's been quite a bit of crime since I moved in 45 years ago. And I'm not so sure that everything is being done as quickly as we want to address crime. And this is to both of you.
Thank you for your question, Edith, and thank you for representing the voice of the many homeowners that live here in Ward 6. I have always said that nothing beats crime like a good paying job. You have to understand that when people don't have the resources that they need, they often turn to crime. There are 3 ways that you get the resources that you need. One is your income, whether that's what you earn or whether it's derived income off of your investments, off of your assets. Income is the #1 way people get the resources that they need. When you have no income, what's left? Public benefits or services is the second way that you get the resources that you need. If you have no income and you have a government that's not invested and you have no public benefits, what is left there? Crime. We have criminalized taking things that don't belong to you as we should. And that is the 3rd way that people get what they need. Those are the only 3. So what we have to do, Edith, is invest in making sure that our residents can tap into that 1 tier and that 2 tier of resources so that people don't feel hopeless and don't turn to crime. And that's what I would intend to do.
Ms. Edith, I'd like to thank you very much for coming out tonight and presenting a very important question. When door knocking, that was the most important thing. What can we do to decrease crime? And as Ms. Henson mentioned, crime is bred from poverty. You steal because you don't have. You sell drugs because you want to provide for your family. The only way to stop that And if you look at my campaign literature, I think we got pretty creative with it. Jobs, not jail. It's simple. Invest in the communities. Create educational opportunities so that individuals can, after they further their education, they can get involved in a career. So they won't have to sell those drugs. So they won't have to steal again. Increasing employment and increasing opportunities across the board is the most important thing, and I've said it so many times tonight because I believe it to be true. When you give those resources, when you give those opportunities, myself personally, when I got the opportunity to step outside of my community and to work and to gain an education, it made me a better person. When I talk to my friends in the community about their goals and what they want to do in the future, they need the resources. Quick story, I got 38 seconds. I called the mayor's office this past summer, coming home as a college student. I'm at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. If elected, I will transfer. Please do not worry. I will be here for you. I'm a criminal justice major with a minor in public policy and political science. I called the mayor's office. I said, hey, I need an internship while I'm home. Do you guys have anything available for me? We'll get back to you. Never happened. My friend, who lives right here in Bay Ridge Gardens, has a desire to be a firefighter. There should be a system in place that if a teen or a young adult wants to invest in a career opportunity, they should be able to call their elected official and say, hey, can you please get me an internship within the city? We have too many resources within our city not to use them.
Thank you all for your questions. And I know that the candidates will be here. I see the hands, but I'm afraid that we are out of time for questions for now. But I know that the candidates will be here after we officially close. For now, each of them has 2 minutes to make a final closing statement. 2 minutes each to make a closing statement. Mr. Day.
I believe that, I believe that I am the right candidate. I've worked hard for this moment. Through internships, through legislative process, through career opportunities, and I've taken all that education, all that talent, and all that drive that kept pushing me to work hard for this moment. This is not just something a dumb 20-year-old is doing. I wouldn't have taken it this far, trust me. Don't let my age be a factor, because what I lack, I make up for. My opponent prides herself, rightfully so, on being endorsed by 2 environmental groups. You know what I did? I went and I sat in classes at the Howard County Conservancy so I can get the education necessary on environmental problems. I will be a champion for you. What I don't have, I will get, because I'm committed to making sure that we, as a ward, we, not just I, we can move forward, because I'm in the same mess you are. I live within the ward as well. And I look forward to tackling any issue that comes over the next 4 years together. And I think it's important that we talk about, within our term, 4 HACA seats will be up. And I will apply that pressure to our mayor and to our council, and we'll vet them very well so that we can make sure the best individuals are on the board seats, so that mistakes that have happened in the past won't continue to happen. One of my favorite rappers, J. Cole, he has a line where he says, the good news is you came a long way. The bad news is you went the wrong way. We went the wrong way. But I promise you, I'll be here to help you. And if you can't walk, I'll carry you. If I can't carry you, I'll get a wheelchair. And we'll make it work. I look forward to working for the next 4 years with you guys and championing and fighting every single issue that comes. We're going to make Ward 6 a great place. We're going to make the city of Annapolis a great place. And I think I am the right guy to do that. And I hope you elect me in 5 days as a Democratic nominee. Thank you very much.
Where Juwan is now. At 20 years old, I was a college student at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And then after that, I completed my degree at Coppin State University in Baltimore, and then went to law school at the University of Baltimore, and I've been a practicing attorney now for 7 years. I applaud his effort and I applaud his enthusiasm, but this is a serious job that needs a serious person that understands how to get things done. My dad once wrote a book titled, "How Much Do You Want a New Life?" And I had to ask myself, how much did I want to see change in my community? Did I want it enough to put my name on the ballot? Did I want it enough to sacrifice my privacy? Did I want it enough to sacrifice my time and my money? And I realized that at the end of the day, that was most important to me, was making sure that my friends and neighbors had the same opportunities that I did to live their very best life. So I ask you today, how much do you want a new life? How much do you want to see change in your community? Do you want it enough to come out and vote on Tuesday? Do you want it enough to evaluate the candidates on their merits and make a choice for someone that you know is ready to step in and lead this ward? Thank you.
I'm sorry that we weren't able to get to all the questions that you wanted to ask. As I said, the candidates will be available after we officially close. I just want to remind you of some of the very bleak numbers that we heard at the beginning about turnout in our city overall and in our ward. We can do better than that. Our children's children and our children's children's children are counting on us. To remain home is to cast a vote. And what I hope is that no one here leaves here complacent, believing that it's somebody else's responsibility to care for your vote. You have a vote. People put their lives on the line so that you can vote. So please exercise that. To repeat once more, that because there is not a candidate from the other party, the primary next week is in effect your election. So please come out and vote on September 19th. There's information on those tables in the back along with the cookies and the water. There's information. There's an awful lot of help available to you. If you're not clear about something, if you want help with something, and Action Annapolis also wants you to know, if you need help getting to the polls, say so. If transportation is an issue, say so. An awful lot of faith communities, including the one that I serve, have something called Souls to the Polls. Do not let not having transportation stop you from getting to the polls. If you can't walk there, then let somebody know and we'll make sure that you get there. This has been a great night. We have heard from two impassioned, prepared candidates, and I know that you just cannot wait to applaud them. And so we're going to begin with Ms. Henson. We want to thank her for being here tonight. I am optimistic about the future of this town when I see a young man like Mr. Gay putting himself out there. Thank you very much. We are actually ending on time. So enjoy the cookies, continue the conversation, and thank you so much for hosting us. Thank you very much to Action Annapolis for coordinating. Good to see you.